Hello and welcome everyone. Good evening. My name is Dar Rath and I am the minister here at this church. I just want to tell you just a little bit about myself. I was a nurse for many years working in different areas of healthcare. Went back to university a couple of times and became a professor at McMaster University and at the University of Toronto. I've been married for 59 years. We have 2 children and 6 grandchildren. We've lived in this particular area for 20 years. And during that time, I returned to Wilfrid Laurier University to obtain a Master of Divinity. I was the chaplain, or what you call a spiritual care provider, at our local hospital for 8 years. I love to sew, it's a hobby. I'm a very poor duplicate bridge player. I'm sharing this with you so you will understand that I've been around the block more than a few times. More than a few times. And I don't think I'm naive. However, Aaron Zorzi spoke with me in June about a concern of human trafficking happening in our area. And like many of you, I was completely shocked. Here in this area. I, like many of you, did not know about this. And so Aaron spearheaded this event, and the goal was to have an evening, a presentation such as this, to inform our community about this important topic. Clearly, by the response that we have here, there's a need for us to know more. The intent tonight is to raise awareness of the situation in our community and how, if possible, we can take some action. Often we believe these concerns are for television or they happen down in Toronto or in the big cities, but not here in Saugeen Shores. In fact, it's considered to be a hot spot by some. We need to understand what is really going on. We are so thankful for our community experts who take action every day, those people back there at the tables. Those people here tonight and those people on their teams. Before I introduce our moderator, there's just a couple of details about the evening. This facility has a defibrillator, if you need it. We have a Narcan kit, we have washrooms just down to my right, down the hall. Our church rooms are available for private conversations with some of the speakers or the counselors. You can have refreshments, but I would ask you please not to bring the refreshments into the sanctuary if possible. This evening will be recorded, and it will be shown on our church website and on Saugeen Times online newspaper. We thank you for coming. We thank you for caring. We thank you for wanting to open your ears and your eyes and your hearts. Thank you to our experts for guiding our education for tonight. Our moderator tonight is Jill Umbach. Jill divides her time as coordinator for both the Grey Bruce Children's Alliance and the Bruce Grey Poverty Task Force. She's over 25 years of experience working with international humanitarian aid, human rights-based and community service organizations that are dedicated to community empowerment, poverty alleviation, human rights, advocacy policy development, and humanitarian needs response. So please join me in welcoming Jill Umbach.
Good evening, everybody. I'm very pleased to be here, and I am going to start off with a land acknowledgement and also acknowledge that we have many partners and members from the community from Saugeen First Nation and Nawash here. So I'd like to acknowledge that the land that we are on is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe people, the nation. I want to give thanks to the Saugeen First Nation as well as the Chippewas of Nawash, unceded First Nation. We need to recognize, and I do recognize, that they are the traditional keepers of our land and the water, and that we are all treaty people. So that means under Treaty 45.5 and Treaty 72, we have relationships that are long-standing. Reconciliation begins with a commitment to truth-telling. And I know the last couple of months there's been a lot of truth-telling, a lot of stories coming out with regards to reconciliation and the history of the people on the land where we live. We've heard from a lot of survivors. Tonight we're going to do the same. There's going to be a lot of truth-telling. There's going to be some statistics, but there's also going to be stories. And there's going to be the impact of what is happening in Saugeen Shores, in our community, as well as across Grey Bruce. Reconciliation requires institutions, governments, and individuals to live up to our responsibilities and to understand what the 94 calls to action are. Truth-telling and sharing information on what is happening, particularly when we consider human trafficking, missing and murdered Indigenous women, as well as what's happening to other women and girls and men and boys in our community is very important. Through tonight's awareness session, we're collaborating with both law enforcement and local organizations and the church to play a vital role in getting information out, but also to understand who is responding to trying to eradicate human trafficking in our community. Our collective efforts will create a safer and more compassionate environment where every individual is valued and protected. We have created a safer space in this church within the sanctuary by offering some of the spaces as well and counselors for you. So if anything triggers or impacts you and you just need some time to process it or somebody to help you to process that, please take advantage. We know how it's hard to learn about things happening in our own community. You may already know, and it may be impacting your family or you individually. So we're there to create a safer space for you. Tonight we are going to have 3 speakers come forward and provide information to you. And then afterwards we are going to invite a series of panelists to sit before you and answer your questions. My understanding is that there is paper and pencils in the pews. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so you all know that in front of you there is, and I think for people in the front row were you provided? You've got some at the end of the rows. Okay, so if you have a question that comes up while the speakers are presenting, don't hesitate to write it down, and then what we will do is collect those questions and we'll read them out to the panels. If you don't have a question or want to hold on to your thought until they are in front of you, then I will moderate questions coming from the audience. So what we'd like to do is to, before I go forward, you may have seen a bunch of people at the back of the room, way back there. And so we also want to acknowledge that there are a variety of resources in the back of the hall. And so they are available for you to meet with at any point in time if you feel a need to talk to them because of your own circumstances. But there also will be a time at the end of the evening from 8:30 to 9 o'clock, and all the booths will stay and you'll be able to engage with them, including Saugeen First Nation Women's Respite Shelter. So there's people from Saugeen, Jessica's here, as well as people from other organizations. I don't have the full list. I can see some of them, but please, afterwards you'll be able to meet with them. What I'd like to do is to start by introducing our first speaker, and we're really privileged to have him join us. Inspector Jeremy Mighton is a dedicated member of the Saugeen Shores Police Service. He has over 2 decades of law enforcement experience with the Guelph Police Service, Hanover Police Service, and now Saugeen Shores Police. Inspector Mighton has served in various capacities, including patrol, criminal investigations, and leadership roles. During his time in crime investigation, he was responsible for investigating serious criminal offenses, including child exploitation, child luring, child pornography, sexual assaults, and human trafficking. Inspector Mighton, prior to policing, had obtained a degree from the University of Western Ontario in microbiology and immunology. He also has a diploma for Humber College for funeral service education. So church members, consider that also separate from human trafficking. If you need some, it's really important as well to take us at all stages of life. But sorry, he has lived in Grey Bruce for over 40 years, and he is committed, and that shows by all the services that he has provided across just Saugeen Shores, Hanover, as well as in Guelph. He is committed to this area to make it a safe place for our families to live, work, and play. So I would like to invite Inspector Jeremy Mighton to share his.
Thank you, everyone. I want to echo some thoughts here. I'm really surprised, or pleasantly surprised, at the number of people. We've had different forums in the past, and they're not maybe as well. A little taller. They maybe haven't been as well attended as this, and it's really good to see. From the police perspective, knowledge is power for us, and we can't be everywhere all the time. So once we get our word out and we help educate the community that we help, they can help us. So that's really what the spirit of this whole thing is for. So I'm going to go over I'm going to give you basically the intro, okay? I'm no expert in human trafficking because it changes so very fast that you would have to be in the field to really have a solid foundation on what those investigations are and what the current, today trends are. Have I investigated them? Yes. Do I have a good understanding? Yes. And I just want you guys, everyone here, to all have an understanding of I guess what Ontarians, Canadians.
Can you speak into the mic? We can't hear you back.
Just pull it down a wee bit in front towards you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
There you go. I think that worked now.
Better? No.
Can you put it on the book? Can you put it
Well, I'm also in a band. Usually I have a mic, so there you go. And I have a guitar that's shielding from all this. But anyway, I will repeat myself a little bit there. I'm really thankful that you're all here. We're going to try to give you some knowledge, some information, and maybe some questions, okay? And we're not going to give you all the answers here today. I can assure you that. And I invite you to use the resources around you, the people you know around you, to educate yourselves too, and to look around the community and maybe see what's going on. So with that, don't mind going to the next slide. What is human trafficking? Human trafficking is the recruiting, transporting, transferring, receiving, holding, concealing, harboring, and controlling of a person for the purpose of exploitation. That is our definition. That's what we work under, okay? A lot of words, but that is how we have to try to prove what human trafficking is. Really, you can break it down to three things. It's the act, the means, and the purpose. Overall, it is a human or a group of humans exploiting another human or humans for profit. That's really what it is. Is that still okay with me? Okay. Next slide. All right. So, traffickers control their victims in various ways, such as taking away their identity, documents, through sexual abuse, threats, intimidation, physical violence, and isolation. My personal experience is the operative word, the one you have to focus on is control. They have to have control over that person. When they have that control, then they have what they need. And that's, they then use that or exploit that person. So human trafficking is often characterized as low risk, and high reward activities. So there's a lot of investment probably at the onset, not probably, there is. And once they've obtained that control, it's not a lot of risk to them. They have what they need, and then they can exploit that person for monetary gain. Again, I'm going to give you a quick overview. Our course for human trafficking is 2 weeks at the police college of 8 hours a day. Okay, so we're not going to fit everything in here in 1 hour and 15 minutes by me, but generally speaking, the stages of exploitation is a luring stage, a grooming stage, coercion and manipulation, exploitation, and then recruitment. So luring, what does that mean? Think of, the internet is a great example. Somebody meets somebody online and there's that, we should meet. That's the luring phase. Then they do meet and there's a grooming phase, and that's where they're basically presenting a lifestyle, presenting something that is alluring to that person that they want. Then the coercion and manipulation, it changes from life is really good, life is great, to would you do this for me? Or do this for me? And then it goes to exploitation, which is exactly that. The romance part, the coercion, the grooming is all gone, and now it's just straight up exploitation. And recruitment is now maybe using that person to get more people involved. So you could use one girl to get other girls, would be an example. So we've heard a lot about how this happens here in Port Elgin, and that's absolutely, Saugeen Shores, that's absolutely true. But it's not just here. It's a global problem. Okay, it's a Canadian problem. It's everywhere in Canada. Every part of Canada has it. Basically, it is a way for people to make money. And if you just take out the people part of it, and you look at like a business opportunity, wherever there's a business opportunity, businesses pop up, and that's what this would be like. So wherever there's a market, you will find this. So some statistics, and again, I'm gonna give you a little bit of caution on statistics. They range, depending on your source, depending on your, basically how they're collected. Some of them will all have different statistics here. They're all roughly the same idea. You'll get the idea of what I'm trying to accomplish here. So when I say business opportunity, when you see that human trafficking is a $236 billion a year industry worldwide, that's pretty profound. 27.6 million people are exploited into forced labor and trafficking. 3.3 million of those are children. 10.9 million are women and girls. Again, pretty profound statistics, just to show you. That's more to give you an idea of the seriousness of this. There are two types of trafficking that we'll talk about. Domestic trafficking and international trafficking. And again, I've kind of touched on that already, and that is where we have trafficking within our borders, within Canada, and also within provinces, within counties. So it's not just a Saugeen Shores problem. People that are here are going to travel to Huron County, are going to travel down to London, right? There's those different tracks, I guess we'll call them. And it's a very common misconception that this is an international problem and only deals with international people. So yes, there is international trafficking. Yes, people are brought into Canada, but it is also the people next door. The person next door could be the victim of trafficking here. So that's very important to know. Yeah, I have a statistics here that over 90% of human trafficking occurrences in Canada involve victims who were born in Canada. So that kind of gives you an idea of where our victims are coming from, and basically a homegrown problem at this point. Let's go to the next slide. Again, just some statistics. I said it's a Canadian problem. Some would argue it's an Ontario problem in Canada, if you're from different provinces. And a lot of that is what you already know about Ontario. We have a lot of people, we have a lot of concentrated people, all in one area of Canada, or one area of Ontario. So 62% of all Canadian reported human trafficking cases occur in Ontario. So that's not, so I can show her that's an Ontario problem. And you only have to look at the GTA and how even this area has changed, how big and how populated all of Ontario is getting. Of those statistics in Ontario, 96% of human trafficking cases are females. The most common age group is 18 to 24, and 17 and under is a close second. And you might find this next statistic hard to believe, but I've actually talked to a trafficker, and I've actually talked to a victim, and this statistic is not unreachable. So $280,000 is an annual financial gain that you could make off one person, probably pretty easily, which is scary, but also shows you why people get involved, maybe get lost in it, and also get exploited for it. 9 in 10 victims of human trafficking know their accused trafficker. This isn't a stranger offense. This isn't something that, you don't know the person. You all of a sudden fall victim to this often. Well, 9 out of 10 times, they know their trafficker. And 1 in 3 are trafficked by an intimate partner. So, this is just, I'm going to spare you any further statistics. I just want to put this in here. This is another example. Real quick Google search. This brought me to the Canadian Centre to End Human Trafficking. Very informative site. Shows you that, and their data is all gathered from actual people calling in. So it's not, I can stand here and tell you what police know, and other agencies are going to tell you what they know. And collectively, we can give you a picture, but I won't have the whole, won't have everything, because not everyone wants to call the police. And what my own experience, just anecdotally, I investigated one victim of human trafficking, and she told me that it was only the 3rd time she met me that she trusted me enough to then speak to me. So we may have lots of encounters with victims of human trafficking, but until we reach that point where they want to tell us more, often we don't know, or they're not ready, or we don't have the resources necessary to help them out of the bad situation they're in. By resources, I mean, we'll get into lots of this, but for somebody to leave that kind of relationship, they have to know they're going to be safe, looked after, cared for, and oftentimes there's threats of violence against them or their family. So how are we going to protect them? How are we going to protect their family? So they feel trapped until we can start taking those different elements and meeting them for them so that they feel secure enough to tell the whole story, not little bits of the story. Again, we talked about, and actually it was already said, that there's a misconception this is like a Toronto problem. It isn't. It's everywhere in Ontario. And from what I can see and what I've seen through the years, so, I mean, we can look back at the movie Pretty Woman is a good example of a traditional, I'll call it the old style of human trafficking, where a sex worker walks a track, the car pulls up, and offers services. That you no longer have to do that. The internet provides that whole thing behind closed doors, much safer and much bigger audience. So the whole thing has changed. And so when we look at is it a Toronto problem? They could be from Toronto, then they travel all across Ontario, Canada, even into the States. So no, it's not just a metropolitan or a Toronto problem. Okay. You're going to probably find, and this won't be wrong, whenever people think of trafficking, they think of sex trafficking. I'm just going to raise a couple different other forms of trafficking that are encountered. The majority, I'll be clear, the majority of victims are in that sex trafficking category. We also encounter, and we have also investigated, labor trafficking. So basically, that is a modern form of slavery in which individuals perform labor or services through use of force, fraud, or coercion. Again, it's that control. So they have to have some kind of control in order to get what they want out of people. So they use different things like coercion, threats, and violence to force people to work long hours for little to no pay, often on unsafe working conditions or in industries. There's some examples along the bottom. It's not limited to that. It's actually just limited to the imagination of the trafficker. What can I use this person for, and what can I make money at? That's really what, it's kind of a whole different, it's like normal business, but with people. So if there's business opportunity, which I said before, they're looking for ways to exploit that. All right, so temporary foreign workers are increased risk due to, and I'll just go through these quickly, the lack of permanent status. What that means is if someone's been brought into the country and they're not necessarily a permanent resident of Canada, they are very susceptible because they don't want to go back. Maybe they left the country for a specific reason. Maybe they need to be here because they've been sent here by their family to provide back home for their family. So again, there's that control. So if you're the trafficker, you can pick out the reason why or what it is that that person has or needs, and then you can exploit that reason. So employer-specific work permits, same idea. Housing, so if you've come to a brand new country and you've been given a house and all your documents have been taken away, we as people, that's a basic element of survival, shelter. So they're very, I mean, if you threaten to take away their shelter, they're scared and they're going to comply. That's that coercion, that's that control again. Often, and this is true for any trafficking, they get isolated. So if you had family, the trafficker will remove you from your family and remove you from everything you know, so you don't have any contact with those that you care about, so that you're much more controllable, and it's basically controls their mind, controls their body, controls their spirit. So it takes them away from everything they know. The rest are just along the same idea. Again, control is the main theme here. You just go to the next one. Okay. So when we talk about sex trafficking, I'll just spin back to that. What we're looking at, when I talk about the control you saw for labor trafficking, when it's sex trafficking, they're looking for people who are vulnerable. There's actually, and this will maybe surprise some, maybe not surprise others, there's manuals you can buy on how to exploit people. They're available for purchase. It's very scary in my mind. It was when I found out. And it's actually taught by some people, like generational. So once you know how to exploit a person's weakness, that's a very powerful thing, and you can use it obviously for the bad. And so they're looking for different vulnerabilities: poverty, being a female, history of violence or neglect, history of child sexual abuse, low level of education, low level of self-esteem, they feel unloved. This is by no means a comprehensive list, and it can be anyone from the straight A student to the high-performing sports athlete. If there's that one thing that they have that somebody knows how to exploit, they can fall victim to this. We'll just talk again about the stages of trafficking. Luring, and as I mentioned before, that's where the trafficker assesses the victim's vulnerabilities. We've all done it. We're humans. You meet somebody, you know what maybe scares, what they don't like. A simple analogy would be, you know that somebody's afraid of being alone. So you might never let them be alone. You might say that you'll always be there for them, and you might play into that. Another vulnerability is often used by sex traffickers is love. So the trafficker makes the victim feel loved, makes them feel something they haven't felt before. And they fall in love with them, and they maybe even get things that they wouldn't have normally had access to. So a really good example is maybe a purse that was unaffordable, so they're not only in love, but here's this man who's giving me a purse that I couldn't afford, so it's this whole lifestyle that they've never had before. They fall in love with that. They don't want to lose it. They want to lose that person. That's what luring is all about. And that luring spills into grooming, and that's exactly what I was talking about. There's a boyfriend, they call it Romeo pimp here, and they create that illusion of everything you ever wanted in a man. It quickly changes to coercion and manipulation, and that's where mixed messages, like, if you really love me, you would do this. Okay, so that's that coercion. And so once you've got them loving you, you start to expand on what they'll do for you. And that really is that conditioning, sex with a reward, isolation from loved ones. And they are striving to get back to something they lost. So if you think about it in your different relationships in life, if you've upset somebody that you love, you want to make it better. You want that good feeling to come back, that relationship to be like it was. And so you will do things. You'll apologize, maybe go buy a nice gift, you'll make them dinner. There's something that you know makes them happy. And that's what the trafficker exactly wants. They get mad at them, they take something away that they really loved, and that person works really hard to get back in the good books. Okay? And so working really hard to get back in the good books expands into sex work, if it's a sex trafficker. And then it goes from there, and it spirals and gets into exploitation. That's just where you've now lost everything, essentially, at this point. That Romeo has whisked you away from your family. You now have no ID, you have no cell phone, you have no money. You may not even know the city you're in. And you may not be able to do much more than depend on the very person that's doing that to you for survival. And that's where the true exploitation happens. That's where the true money is made. And obviously the true damage to these people happens. Now, the question I get asked a lot, and it's not just with trafficking, it's also in drug investigations. Why don't they just not do it? So in drug trafficking, like when I talk about drug use, it's not often, it's not a choice that they can make at a certain point. Like when you are so addicted to drugs, you're not doing it to get high anymore, you're doing it not to get sick, or it's basically what you have to do. So when we're talking about, like, sure, it would be easy just to walk away from your Romeo and go back to your life. But there's lots of different tactics that they're using, so they invoke a state of fear. One that we didn't cover and is often used is one that I talk about a lot with my own personal friends and their kids. If you take Snapchat, okay? I don't know if you know what Snapchat is or don't, but you take any app, any communication app, and people are using Snapchat and they'll send all kinds of information through that to somebody. It's often the person they think it's supposed to be. You don't know who the recipient is. And it could be things like, hey, it's a really nice day on Elm Street today. So by that message, okay, if it wasn't a friend of yours, they know that you live somewhere on Elm Street. There'll be other little clues like, really great day, it's Spirit Day at SDSS today. So you take those two clues, and now I've narrowed you down to you live Saugus Shores, you're on Elm Street, and you're probably going to post a selfie in your bedroom. You're probably going to post a selfie somewhere about your house. So basically your world starts going, and they know where you are. Somebody knows where you are that maybe you didn't attend. Snapchat also has Snap Maps, and I don't know if everyone knows how that works, but that's where you can tell exactly where somebody is unless it's turned off. Like, these are all features of this one app. This isn't to knock Snapchat. It's just that there's lots of different applications and lots of different things out there that are used well between people that know what they're like intending to do that, but somebody can see the weakness of that and exploit it. So anyway, with that knowledge, so now you're learning about that person's family. So you might say, hey, my brother won his baseball game today, right? So now I know you live in Saugus Shores, you have a brother, you go to SCSS, and you might post about your sister. So it just keeps going. So what can happen is then now in comes the trafficker. They whisk you off your feet. It's the man of your dreams, and he knows everything about you, including where you live, who your family is, and they use that against you. So they can scare the wits out of you that they will hurt your family. And so that, when you just say, why don't they leave? It's not that easy. At that point, when they've got in that deep, they can't just walk away. They have to have their, whatever it is that's holding there has to be alleviated so that they feel safe enough and those around them feel safe enough, or they feel that those around them are safe enough that they can actually tell the story or leave. So it's a very challenging situation, multifaceted, and it's not just that easy. Like I told you, you could get whisked away, you could end up, so somebody from Port Elgin could end up in, I don't know, let's go with Ottawa. Never been to Ottawa before, and so they don't know where they are, they don't know how to get home. That's a long way from Port Elgin. So there's that fear of, what am I going to do? It's the dead of winter, who's going to look after me? I have no money, I have nothing. The psychological hold we did talk about too, and that's where, you know, somebody, how could that person I love treat me that way? They're going to get better. They're going to do, tomorrow will be a sunnier day. So that psychological, like, call it trauma bond as well, where you just can't, they can't get away from the person no matter how bad it is. So some of the other speakers in our panel will talk about this. So we as police, and I'll just speak, I can speak in generalities, okay? I will not get into any specific cases, but the victim that I really tried hard to help, she had a lot of needs before she would feel safe to talk. And that's what we have to do, is get into, we look at how we can start alleviating some of those needs. Housing, what we can do to maybe protect their family. Do they need medical support? Do they need their identification back? A simple thing like that. Like, we all know that it's easy to get your identification if you have other identification, if you have a way to get there. But you start taking away all those different things, like how do I get my driver's license back? I don't even have an address for them to mail it to. Like, I know it sounds basic, but it's not. Maybe they're addictions, so another way that they can exercise control is get somebody addicted to a drug, and then they're dependent on that supply. So maybe we need to help them with their addictions. Basically, in my case, and I know that this is what officers involved in these investigations do, you have to get to know the person that's being trafficked. You have to get their trust. You have to try to meet their needs. And we're not even talking about prosecution yet. We're just talking about getting them safe. Okay. So prosecuting the trafficker is another whole ball of wax with their court system, the evidence that's needed, and the testimony that poor victim has to endure. So what can you do for us? And I think that's what we're all going to talk about now. But basically, I started this whole thing saying that the community has to support the police has to support the community. You will be our eyes and ears. And so after today, you'll have a bit better understanding. If there's something that doesn't look right, we're always here for a phone call. You never know. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Inspector Mike. It's really critical, again, as I say, the partnership that we have with both the police and the community services that are available. And so our next speaker, Katie Barker, comes from Women's House serving Ray and Bruce, and she works across both counties. And specifically, Katie is a youth sexual assault and anti-human trafficking counselor. And so she has a passion for working with youth using anti-racist, anti-oppressive, trauma-informed, holistic, and feminist-focused approaches. It's a lot to pull together, it's a lot to respond, but it's what's needed. And Inspector Mighton has spoken to a lot of those factors and needs that a person coming out of having been sex trafficked needs. To be able to feel safe and move on. And Katie's going to speak to that, as well as our next speaker, Jane Hartley. But in Katie's role, she offers one-on-one counseling She advocates for more support, so she's navigating where are the supports. She does case management, safety planning. A big part of her work is looking at that safety planning, and it's so critical, as you've just indicated. She'll go to court with people and support them. She'll work on how to work with survivors. She's been a worker for over 12 years, so she comes with a lot of experience and knowledge of the region. She's worked in adolescent mental health. She's been teaching, program planning, and more. Currently, she is the coordinator for the Grey Bruce Anti-Human Trafficking Committee. She also, outside of work, when she's not running around and spending evenings with people and most importantly with youth, she's a single mom with an amazing 6-year-old daughter named McKenna, and she has a dog named Diesel, which is super cool. Katie, please let me
Just going to see if we can get this for you. How tall are you?
Okay, that's perfect. That way I can see the screens too.
Use your big girl voice.
Awesome, thank you for having me here today. As Jill said, I'm here from Women's House, and I'm also the coordinator of the Grey Bruce Anti-Human Trafficking Committee. So I found myself really kind of deep in the work in the last year and a little bit. Inspector Wrighton did a fantastic job at doing an introduction. I'm just going to kind of hone in and talk about what we're seeing in Grey and Bruce and why we're seeing it. So Grey Bruce counties are predominantly rural and comprise an area roughly equivalent to the size of Prince Edward Island. So, just to put that into focus, the population of PEI is 156,947, and the population of Grey Bruce is 174,300. So, our councillors cover both Grey and Bruce County. In my role, I'm currently covering both Grey Bruce. So yeah, it's a pretty big area that we cover, so we're seeing quite a bit. Can I get the next? Oh, perfect. In terms of geography, this large rural area has easy and direct driving routes to several larger urban centers, including the GTA, as well as other urban centers in southwestern Ontario. These routes allow traffickers easy access into and out of the region, as well as numerous back roads on which to travel in order to avoid detection. So what possible geographic risks do you think we have in Grey and Bruce? So some geographic risk factors is there's isolation, the ability to move around undetected. Communities have a false sense of security, much like the view is not happening in our community. Access to numerous waterways like northeast and west coasts, difficult to monitor the traffic. Tourist industry and transient population, especially in port towns such as Meaford, Owen Sound, Port Elgin, Kincardine, and Tobermory. And we're homeland to Saugeen First Nations and Chippewas and Nawash unceded First Nations. And we have the direct line into and out of the city via Highway 6, 10, 26, and 400. And this just shows here a little map of all of those areas that we're talking about. And really shows how big our two counties are. Oh, can you hear me properly? Sorry about that. Can I get the next slide, please, Kate? Now I'm hitting my notes. Okay, so socioeconomic risk factors. The health status, both physically and mentally, of Canadians is greatly impacted by income and social equity. Access to education, healthcare, healthy food, and safe and affordable housing has a big effect on our overall well-being. Disparities in socioeconomic status influences how human trafficking impacts our communities and who will be most at risk. In Grey Bruce, 17% of youth under the age of 17 live in poverty, and that was pulled from the Poverty Task Force. And risk factors associated with... Sorry.
When you turn your head, it's
I'll try to do it this way. Is that better? Yeah, okay, so sorry about that. I'm not used to using a mic. Risk factors associated with poverty include higher rates of mental illness, addictions, and higher rates of family breakdown and CFS involvement. So as you can see, I'm not going to go through these self-reported in Grey Bruce here, but there's just some stats there that I pulled from our human trafficking manual that the Violence Prevention Grey Bruce put together. Socioeconomic risk factors continued. On the other hand, lucrative local industries, including tourism and the power generation industry, create transient populations with disposable income. Since the issue of human trafficking is not widely understood in the general population, this may make a potential market for traffickers to identify to exploit. And I have this slide as well, but I'm just going to leave this up here because, again, Inspector Mayne did a fantastic job covering that. I guess right now I'm going to just take a minute and talk about maybe some of the work that we're doing on the Grey Bruce Anti-Human Trafficking Committee. So we have a group of people that I would say, what would you say, probably 30 to 40 community partners come together each month to discuss the issue, and it's all people who are trying to do wraparound services for people. So some of the work that we're doing currently is reviewing some of the manuals that have been put out in the past to make sure that they're completely up to date. We're really trying to work on community education and engagement, and we're trying to do a lot of work in the schools too. So that's been our main focuses. There is a group that's trying to do some more of that really outreach work, which has been nice. And we also have a little subgroup also that we're going to try to do some work with the city councils to try to let everyone know what this issue is and bring more awareness to it. Because if the city councils can get on board with some of the work that we're doing, then we can have some kind of support and possibly funding, which is really important in nonprofit work. So that's a little bit about what we've been doing. I could talk about it all night, but I'm going to pass it back to Jill here and introduce the lovely Jane.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to remind people that if you've got questions, start writing them down now. Jane is going to speak, and then we will have everybody up on the panel. So get ready with any questions that you have, write them down now, and we'll collect them. And therefore, we'll have some good time from 8 to 8:30 to be able to engage and ask questions. Up next is Jane Hartley, who's the Executive Director for Victim Services Bruce Grey. And Jane has over 25 years of dedicated experience working in mental health, justice and corrections, violence against women, and victim advocacy. So she leads the victim services for Bruce Grey. She comes with a lot of compassion, resilience, and community-focused collaboration. Throughout her career, Jane has been a steadfast advocate for individuals navigating crises, ensuring that they receive the guidance, support, and advocacy needed to find stability and to find safety. Once again, there's a lot of people in this room that work actively on finding that safety piece and accessing resources to provide stability. Jane's leadership style reflects that work, reflects a deep commitment to partnering and empowerment, fostering a supportive environment for both staff and the community served. I don't know if she has a dog. You do? What is her name?
Her name is Piper. I'm from Kincardine.
Okay.
Bagpipes. Yeah.
Okay. Bagpipes, Scottish, Kincardine, you got it. My dog's name is Archie. I'm Scottish, but I'm from Hanover. Jane's vision continues to elevate, and I think this is really incredible. We've had a refresh of the victim services and staffing, and there's always a need for volunteers. But Jane is going to speak to the work that she does and also share more information on sex trafficking with everyone.
I am not as vertically gifted as my co-panelists here, so can you all hear me in the back? Is that good? Excellent. Okay. So thank you all for coming, and thank you, Jeremy and Katie, for all the wonderful information that you've shared tonight. What I would like to do is start to talk about some of the ways that we as a community can support individuals that might be at risk, or you might know somebody who have experienced trafficking in one form or another. My suspicion is that this room is full today of people who care deeply about this issue. And in our community, we're wanting to learn how we can collectively take action. So tonight, that's what I would like to talk a little bit about, offer some tips and strategies on how you can respond, and then a little plug for our Victim Services Bruce Gray volunteer program, if you're interested in taking awesome action. So, awesome. So some of the key approaches when we're talking about supporting victims of trafficking or really any type of tragic circumstance or crime event is to be present. And what does that mean? So that means simply to be there for that individual, for that survivor. It doesn't mean you have to have all the answers. It doesn't mean you have to know exactly what to say or what to do in that moment. It just means to be present and be attentive. So talking to that person and allowing them to express how they're feeling, express what they've gone through, share their story. You might be the first person who's really taken the time to sit and listen to what that person has gone through. And that's an honor and a privilege that we get to do every single day in the work that we do in Victim Services. And why do we do that? We want to make sure that we're not pressuring or putting undue stress on for them to talk about things that they're not perhaps ready to share about or things that they're not comfortable discussing. This really is guided by what the victims or the survivors are wanting to say in that moment, and they get to drive what is important for them to say at that time. Number 2 is we want to avoid judgment, because a big part of fear of disclosure or reaching out or sharing what people have gone through is they don't want to be judged. They don't want to experience shame. They don't want to experience that fear that you might look at them differently. Oftentimes, like Katie and Jeremy have said, people find themselves in situations that they didn't choose. And they're having to do things that they wouldn't choose to do if it was up to them. So if they're confiding in you or disclosing what they've gone through, honor that, and please don't be judgmental and be open. And it's okay to say to somebody, this is really difficult information for me to hear, but I'm going to sit here with you and we can figure it out together. So that's something that you can say to somebody regardless of what their difficult situation is. And why do we do that? It's really important because oftentimes those feelings of guilt or shame prevent them from reaching out for resources and supports. So if they've reached out to somebody once before and they've experienced that negative reaction, they're less likely to reach out again. Number 3, we always want to reassure them of their worth. Because a lot of the manipulation and a lot of the coercion that happens is around making them feel worthless, useless, unvalued, and not worthy. A lot of the coercion that happens and the manipulation and the control is because traffickers or abusers will make them feel like nobody else in the world loves them or cares about them or that there's any value in their lives. So if you can be that one person that helps to shine that glimmer of hope back in their world, that they are worth more than what's happening to them, and that they deserve care and support, and you're going to be there to hear their story and listen, you've done them probably one of the biggest supportive services that they've likely seen in quite a long time, because that's not what they're hearing from their trafficker or their abuser. And that's important because we can help restore their sense of self-dignity and make them feel like they're worthy of accepting the help, making them more likely to reach out and accept whatever supports we can offer to them as an individual and as a community who clearly wants to do lots about what's happening in Saugeen Shores and in Bruce and Gray counties. Some of the actions we can take, as Jeremy mentioned, safe housing is really a big barrier. Oftentimes, they're isolated, they're taken from their families. We receive referrals every day from individuals who have experienced trafficking and they find themselves in an unknown community. They don't know where they are, they have no money, they have no resources, they don't know who to call, they don't know where to go. They've perhaps been estranged from their friends and family for quite some time. So they find themselves in a situation where if they leave their abuser, they have nowhere else to go. And living on the street is a far scarier prospect than living with the person who's unfortunately mistreating or abusing them. So you oftentimes will find people who are open to help, but if we can't give them some of those basic needs, like housing, safe housing, food, right? People have to live, and we think about our basic needs: food, shelter, water, clothing. If we can help to try and make some of those connections to those very valuable community resources which exist, We're going to help increase the likelihood that they're going to be able to disconnect from the trafficking or from the abusive situation that they find themselves in, because they're going to have more supports to be able to become more independent and less reliant upon the person who's abusing them. As I mentioned, connecting to resources is really important. There's lots in our communities. We have some that work in Bruce and Gray, Victim Services, Bruce Gray. We serve the entire province of PEI here in Ontario. It is a big area. I've driven it end to end many times in a single day. So a lot of those community resources that we connect them to are local shelters. We have 3 shelters here in Bruce and Gray County. We have their dedicated teams provide counseling, transition supports to help navigate those community resources. They offer safe housing and accommodation, risk assessment, safety planning, counseling, all sorts of services. In addition, we have different partnerships with resources like legal aid, where there could be free legal counsel, a couple of hours for them to sit and connect with a lawyer, where that may not have ever been something that they can even consider paying for a lawyer when they can't, afford to eat or live. So there's lots of ways that we can get folks connected, and the bigger we build that network of support and safety for them, the less likely they are to have to feel reliant and dependent upon the person who's abusing or mistreating them. So building those connections to resources is crucial and key action that we can do. Access to medical health care and medical supports and services oftentimes is something that they've been denied. So if they've been abused for a long time, there may be untreated, or there may be physical injuries, there could be lots of things that are happening. So helping to get them connected to a resource. We're really fortunate that we have the Sexual Assault Nurse Examiners program in Owen Sound, and we have other practitioners in the community that do community outreach and mobilized medical care. So there's lots of, again, resources, but that's something that we also want to help them find somebody that they're comfortable in seeing. Because again, as we start to connect people to programs and services and they start to share their story, it's important that they're the ones deciding who they're talking to, where they're going, and what they want to share. It's not about us to tell their story for them. It's about them to begin to find their own voice, feel empowered, and to be able to tell their experience to the people they want to share it with. Some of the other things when we consider about supporting survivors is encouraging small steps. For somebody, it might be getting up in the morning and brushing your teeth. To most of us, it's something we do every day. We don't even become conscious of it. But for some individuals who have never had the freedom or the privilege to make the choice as to when they're going to get up, if they're going to get to eat, if they're going to be able to brush their teeth, that is a big change in the way they've perhaps been living. So knowing that for them getting up and brushing their hair that day might just be the one thing that they can accomplish, and celebrating those small next steps and whatever those look like. Every individual is unique in what they need, and it's really up to us to listen to what's important to them in that moment and not pushing them beyond what they're comfortable engaging in. Respecting their boundaries. So if it's something that they're not comfortable doing, sharing, or talking about, we need to respect that. So not pushing them to share when they're not ready, or not forcing them to go and do something or engage somewhere that they're not comfortable doing. It's not about what we need for that person, it's about what they need, and we need to listen to that and do all that we can to try and support them at their own pace. Rebuilding that sense of self-identity. So understanding that oftentimes when you are trafficked or you're coerced or you're lured, you lose a sense of who you are. You're no longer Jane, born and raised in King Park, Ontario, has a dog named Piper, and she loves to jump in, and I still cry and get goosebumps every Saturday night, and I always will. That's not who I am if I've been abused or coerced or taken from my world. I'm a possession. I'm property. I'm a means of making money for somebody who wants to exploit me, and I have no identity beyond that. So for a lot of the survivors that we work with, and I know our shelter teams can validate the same thing, is that they come in not knowing who they are. So knowing that when they come and start accessing supports and services, it's about figuring out what do they want. And to say to somebody, what do you need right now? Oftentimes they'll say, I don't know what I need, because they've not been given the opportunity to make choice. So we want to really be able to listen to what they need and respect that we want to help build their self-confidence, help them figure out what they need and who they are, and regain that sense of control over their lives. Big thing is we want to make sure that we're not coming in and rescuing. And what that means is resisting that urge to take over and say, well, just come with me, we're just going to go do it. You need housing, so we got to go figure it out. We got to fill out the forms, so we're going to sit down. It's 37 pages, and anybody that's done a housing application knows that it's 37 pages, and it's really, really long. That can be incredibly overwhelming for someone, right? We want to respect what they need and not rescue and take over and make those decisions for them. They're the ones that are living with the outcomes of whatever decisions they make. So if I tell someone, and unless you're my kiddo, that you need to clean your room, that you need to do something, we're not serving them, because ultimately they might not want to live with the outcome, or the outcome that happens may not be something that they wanted. So knowing that we can't rescue and take over, we want to empower them, because they've had their power taken away. It's been stripped and robbed of them. They've not had the opportunity to make choice or have personal power. So us rescuing isn't going to help them. A big part of it too is taking care of ourselves. This is really, really hard work. I've been doing this work for 25 years, and I can tell you, I am incredibly privileged because I have a phenomenal support network of friends and family and colleagues that I can rely on and talk to and I can connect with. So if you are struggling as a support person, or if you have somebody in your family who's struggling, know how you yourself need to find support in order to stay strong to help the other person. And also establish your own boundaries. So knowing what you're able to do, what you can do, knowing that there's often times where you might be asked to do something that you're not comfortable with. It's okay to set boundaries. So know where those limits for you are, and don't be afraid to exercise those. A big part of it is knowing that you don't have to have all of the answers. This isn't up to you to solve this problem, because as you can see, I'm a social worker, so I don't do really good math, but I'm going to say there's probably 100 or so people here. 100 people are all here today saying, how can we help? Not one person, no matter how long you've done this work or what your role is, has all of the answers. You don't have to know everything all at once. But what you do need to know is that there are supports and resources that you can reach out to. And that, if that's your takeaway from tonight, is that you can get help. And there's a whole bunch of tables set up in the other room and delicious snacks and cookies. So I encourage you to look at the banana bread. Can't wait to try these. Connect with those people at the tables in the back, because they're the ones that are going to be able to help give you the information, the tools, the phone numbers, the business cards, the resources that you're going to need. Or perhaps stick it in your purse, stick it in your backpack, put it on your fridge. You might not need it today, but if ever you encounter someone that in the future might benefit, you having that number might help somebody, might help save their lives, or might have you feel more comfortable to be able to engage if you are concerned about something. Important to know that if somebody were to contact, say, a crisis line or a helpline, oftentimes those services are confidential. So value to those programs is really wonderful, and that if you've got a victim or a survivor who says, I'm not ready to share my name, I'm not ready to say I'm Jane from Kincardine and this terrible thing has happened to me and I need help, I can call anonymously. And they don't record it. There's no address that pops up. There's no phone number that pops up. It's an anonymous service or support that gives them the opportunity to share their story, ask for help. And I've worked on the helplines here at the shelter in Kincardine, worked in London area. I can tell you, we get callers all the time saying, I don't have to give my name, do I? And I would always say, no, this is up to you. You share what you're ready to share, and I'm here to listen. So knowing that they can do that is really important. So for folks that maybe aren't ready to reach out and share all of their personal information, there's lots of cards in the back of the room. There's helplines, there's 100 lines that are 24 hours a day. There's texting services that people can connect with in the way that they're comfortable sharing the information that they want. So I just want to say thank you. Thank you to everyone tonight who took time out of your evening, away from your families, in the rain, to come here and to be present and to talk about this and to hear it. because this is something that is present in our communities. We're all concerned, and together we can make a difference. We can be prepared to respond, we can offer support when it's needed, and we can make this a safer and stronger community together. So thank you again for coming tonight. The road to recovery is not easy. This is not an easy journey for the people that are going through this, that have experienced it. So understanding that there's no one cookie cutter solution that's going to work for every single person. There are teams that can wrap around, like Katie mentioned, to provide advocacy with housing, advocacy with legal, help to get people basic needs, get them their food, get them the counseling, and all those things that they need. So thank you for being here today. That's all.
Okay, so I'm going to invite all our panelists to come up and join us up here at the front. And I am going to see about who's collecting all Erin and people at the back, volunteers. So if you want to come and take a seat here, there's one mic at the back. Is that switched on?
Should be.
Yep, okay.
Just gonna switch.
So I'm inviting our key speakers to come up. I'm also inviting Peter Reed.